Joining me now are two former prosecutors from other high-profile cases, civil rights attorney and prosecutor in the Bill Cosby case and MSNBC legal analyst Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, and former federal prosecutor in the John Edwards case, Jeffrey Say. So, Jeffrey, let me start with you. What's the waiting game like right now for both sides in this case?
Chris, it's nice to be with you again. It's like waiting for Godot. Samuel Beckett couldn't have written it, frankly, any better way. It is this process of hurrying up and all of a sudden just waiting for the jury now to go through. And I think what you heard from a lot of those other jurors from the McDonald case, Blagojevich case, reflects something I think implicit and important in what they're doing, which is they're going to take this very methodically. And I actually think they'll go a lot more slowly than people are predicting right now.
Kristen, Todd Blanche gave up a high-profile law practice to be Donald Trump's attorney. Alvin Bragg knows this could be the only case and is likely the only case that's going to be prosecuted against Donald Trump before the election. What is that? I mean, the personal stakes for a high-profile case, period, as you well know, the eyes of so many people were on you, and the way, do you feel that weight? Because it's not just a prurient interest that people had in your case, or I think have in Donald Trump's case. It's a case about what they believe tells us something about America, about this country. That's enormous.
An enormous weight, right? And specifically, like in this particular case, we're talking about the ex-former president, potentially, as Judge Merchan put, the next president of the United States. So that is a huge weight, and particularly in this polarizing environment, it is extremely weighty. It reminds me of the weight, like you mentioned, Chris, that I felt in the Cosby case, where here I am as a Black female prosecuting, a Black icon beloved by all, including myself as a child. And so that dynamic does weigh very heavily. I think one of the things that got me through all of that weight that Todd Blanche doesn't have is that as a prosecutor, at the end of the day, we are trying to deliver justice. We're trying to do it honestly, and we keep our eyes on the evidence. We're not defending a client. We're actually trying to defend the citizens of that particular county or that state if it's a federal prosecutor. So in that case, it was a heavy responsibility, but it was something that we felt in every single one of our cases. So yeah, very heavy.
Did you have the confidence in the jury? Because it was interesting listening to one of the jurors. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to our previous segment, but she was on the Rod Blagojevich jury, and she was saying, she was kind of looking, maybe hoping, maybe there could be something that wasn't quite right. I think there are probably a lot of people who grew up as you did, as I did, idolizing Bill Cosby, who thought, when they first heard it, you almost hope it's not true because you had such a different version of it. How do you bring people to that place, jurors to that place, to put all of that aside, whether it's a Donald Trump or Bill Cosby or Rod Blagojevich, or do you just count on what you said, which is they're going to look at the law and judge the law?
Yeah, Chris, it's hard. One of the things that when you're investigating a case as a prosecutor, you do investigate it alongside with the police. And so when you're dealing with high profile individuals, whether it's Trump or Cosby, John Edwards, you really need to focus in on the evidence. You have to put everything else to the side. And so when you follow the evidence, yeah, of course, I think most people, whether the celebrity is an individual or a politician, most people want individuals to do the right thing. And in the Cosby case, I was looking at whether or not this icon had sexually abused Ms. Constant or countless others. And so, yeah, I did not want to believe it going into it. But unfortunately, the evidence was so overwhelming that it was just inconceivable that he didn't. And I knew that I could prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, when you're convincing the jury, when you're talking to the jury, you're bringing them through that whole stage. You're helping them overcome the celebrity and basically peel those layers of that onion so that they can see the individual, not as a celebrity, but really who they really are. And in the case of Cosby, it was a sexual predator.
Jeffrey, in the John Edwards case, I thought there was an interesting kind of parallel to what we're seeing now, because the defense assailed the credibility of a key witness in your case, accusing him of trying to profit off the scandal, which, of course, is exactly what we heard the defense do with Michael Cohen and frankly, to some extent, Stormy Daniels, right? They accused her of extortion. How well do you think the prosecution did at diffusing some of that criticism?
I thought they did a very good job of the ordering of their case, which is really critical in terms of how you set a narration for the jury and helping them to understand the facts. But I think the most crucial element from their case, from the beginning to the end, is how to make the extraordinary into the ordinary. Whether you're talking about a John Edwards case, a Bill Cosby case, a Donald Trump case, all of these cases have at their root celebrity, novelty, either in terms of the person who's sitting at the counsel table or the charges that are at issue. If the prosecutors in their case were not careful enough, then what may happen is that the jury is left with considering the kind of weight of the world issue, which you never really want the jury to have to be grappling with. We want them to think, as prosecutors, this is an ordinary question I'm being asked to answer, and I'm going to treat it just like any other case. If there's too much of that novelty, that celebrity at play, that increases the pressure quite a bit on what the jurors do. And in many ways, that can actually cause them to retract. We've seen it in a lot of cases, from the ordinary to the extraordinary. But I think that's the biggest issue right now for the prosecutors as they put in their case previously, and now for the jury as they're evaluating it.
Jeffrey and Kristen, what a fascinating conversation. Thank you both. Really appreciate you coming in.